everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here for a very exciting video. I am here for my top 10 books, manga, and graphic novels of 2022. Now, I do want to preface this video by saying that this is going to be a top 10 specifically of my favorite non-romance books that I've read, as well as manga and graphic novels of various genres. There is romance content coming. I am going to film a top 10 contemporary and paranormal romances that I read, as well as top 10 historical romances that I read this year, and top 10 romance novellas. And I know a lot of you guys that follow me are strictly romance readers. Just know that most of the books on this list have a very strong romantic element to them. It just so happens that they're not strictly in the adult romance genre. So I hope that you all will stick with me and get some recommendations from this video. So for number 10, let's just jump right on into it. We have a memoir that came out this year that I feel like took the world by storm, at least the entertainment industry, and that is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. So if you don't know who Jennette is, she was a child star, a child actor. She's most well known for her role as Sam in iCarly and the spin-off show, what was it, Sam and Cat? So this is her memoir, all about her life from the time that she was a very young child to present day. And so she discusses what it was like being a child actor, and the reason why this title is what it is because her mother was absolutely a narcissist and was abusive to Jennette in various ways. And what's interesting is Jennette's discussion of how she didn't realize that her mother was abusive to her until after her mom died. And so that is why, in a way, she's happy that she's no longer on this earth. And what I loved so much about this book is how honest and raw this was. I don't think I've ever read a memoir that's just so real with the reader. And while Jennette is absolutely discussing a lot of heavy topics throughout this book, you can also tell that she has this amazing sense of humor, and it somehow works with these heavy topics that she's discussing. It's just a very well-balanced book and a very well-balanced story, and I'm obsessed with Jennette's writing. You can tell that she wrote this herself and it wasn't ghost-written, and in interviews she has said that she is planning on writing more in the future, so I can't wait to read what she comes out with next. So let's move on to number 9 on this list. Is a graphic novel series slash webcomic series that was turned into graphic novels that I'm just in love with and obsessed with, and I'm really glad that this series was turned into physical graphic novels because I'm not someone that reads webtoons, so I probably wouldn't have picked up this series if not for it being traditionally published. And that is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smith. So this is, at its core, a romance between Hades and Persephone, but this story also includes all kinds of other Greek gods and goddesses, and this takes place in a very interesting futuristic world, but there is still magic going on. And so we are following Persephone as she shows up to live in Olympus, and then Hades comes to meet her. And the art style of this is just absolutely beautiful and stunning. I love Rachel Smith's use of colors and how there's almost like this watercolor texture to the art. It's really cool and really, really stunning. You should know that there are some heavier themes and content warnings in this, such as towards the end of this first volume, there is sexual assault that occurs, and then in volume 2, we are seeing the aftermath of that. But this series is just so addictive to me. I can't wait to see where the story goes. We haven't really gotten to a romance between Hades and Persephone, but they're definitely friends, and I just love their sweet dynamics. So yes, highly, highly recommend this graphic novel series. Next up for number 8 is a book that came highly, highly recommended from Ashley from Bookish Realm, and now I know that I really need to be taking Ashley's recommendations seriously, because 2 books that she recommended ended up on this list. For number 8, we have a very, very dark and hard-hitting YA book that honestly still haunts me to this day, and that is Heroine by Mindy McGinnis. I have read a book by this author before, but I was not prepared for how hard this book hit me on so many levels. So this is a YA fiction novel about our main character, Mickey. She plays softball and she's very serious about that. She wants to eventually go to college and be on a college team and maybe even go pro. And so at the very beginning of the book, we see that her and her best friend, who also plays softball, they get into a very bad car accident, which injures her friend's arm, but Mickey's leg, especially at like the hip socket, is severely, severely injured, to the point where she has to get surgery and get screws put into the hip socket. And so to help her deal with the pain and the aftermath and recovery from that surgery, she is given a prescription for OxyContin. And so we see throughout the book that she becomes more and more dependent and eventually addicted to Oxy, to the point where she does have to start going to a drug dealer to get her Oxy pills. And then eventually, as the title says, she starts using heroin towards the end of the novel. And so this is a very hard book to read. Mindy McGinnis is not pulling any punches about what this kind of addiction does to Mickey and the people around her. It's very real. Definitely look up the content warnings for yourself, because there's a lot going on in this book. And when I tell you, this book took over my life. And I feel like the audiobook narrator also did a fantastic job of, you know, portraying Mickey, because this is told in first person. And as the reader, you almost feel like you yourself are Mickey and you are experiencing these things. It just feels incredibly real. And this is just a very haunting story for sure. And I really appreciate how this ended, because I have read addiction stories like this in the past that end with kind of a neat little bow, and it's kind of a happy ending, right? But with this book, there are very real consequences for what Mickey has done throughout the book. And I just think that the ending was perfectly done. And I thought that this was perfectly paced as well. Like, Mindy McGinnis really went there with this book. It's very dark, but very much worth it, in my opinion. If you are into reading, you know, dark and hard-hitting YA fiction, I can't recommend this highly enough. So for number 7, we have another YA story, but it's very, very, very different from Heroine. This is actually a YA romance manga. You can tell by the way that I'm just smiling. I can't stop smiling thinking about this series. Like, it's amazing and I'm absolutely obsessed. And that is McCoy. This is, like I said, a YA romance manga, and this centers around our main character Satomi, pictured here, and Yagyu. And so at the very beginning of volume 1, we see that Satomi is on the train going to school, and there is this man who is groping her. And Yagyu steps in and blocks the man from doing anything more to Satomi. And Satomi realizes that they actually go to the same school, and so she goes to thank Yagyu, and he's like, I mean, anyone would have done it. It really wasn't that big of a deal. Okay, thanks. And so Satomi quickly develops a crush on Yagyu. And in the past, she's been very afraid to confess her feelings to a crush. to the point where she's never dated anyone before. And so she decides to be brave and tell Yagyu how he feels, and he tells her that he feels the same way, and they start dating. And so this becomes a slice of life series, and it's just adorable, and I love the relationship between Satomi and Yagyu because they're just so open with each other. It's just a very healthy relationship, especially for teenagers. I feel like most young adult romances that you read, there's, you know, a lot of angst and drama and all of those things, and that's all well and good, but I like seeing a healthy teenage relationship, you know. And reading these volumes, there are points where I feel like my heart is going to burst because it's just so sweet and so adorable, and I'm absolutely obsessed. Volume 4 just recently came out, and I can't wait to read that. Like, honestly, I want to reread the first 3 volumes like right now, right this second. And I mean, look how cute the artwork is. Are you kidding me? Oh my God. I love this series so much. All right, next up for number 6 on this list is a comic series that I had heard so many people talking about on YouTube. Whenever I was looking up videos for comic book recommendations, this series was most likely on the list. And unfortunately, it's a series that I kept putting off, but I finally read the first 3 volumes this year, and I'm so glad that I did. That is Saga. So this is an epic science fiction comic series that mainly centers around this romance between Marco and Alana. So they are, I guess they're 2 different species, and they are from 2 different sides of this space war that's going on. People find out that they have gotten married and had a child together, and that's like the biggest taboo ever. And so this basically centers around Marco and Alana being on the run with their baby Hazel and all of these different people that are after them. The romance in this between Marco and Alana is absolutely everything. Marco, the hero, is so swoony. I love this fictional character with my heart and soul. The way that these 2 people are so devoted to each other, and it's just a very healthy relationship, and it's also entertaining and funny at times. Like, it's absolutely incredible. And one of the things that I love about this series as well is that we are following several different perspectives, but I'm finding that I'm equally invested in each POV. It's not like I only care about Marco and Alana, and then anytime another character shows up, I'm bored, you know? Like, I am equally invested. I'm on the edge of my seat. I want to know what happens next to everyone in this series, and it's just so well done. The artwork is so cool. The scope of this world is absolutely incredible, and the different kinds of people and creatures that these authors have come up with, it's just absolutely insane and incredible. So I can't recommend this series highly enough. I cannot wait to read more volumes of this in 2023 for sure. I love this series so much that I just bought myself a box set of the first 9 volumes. So for number 5 on this list is a manga series that has completely taken over my life this year, and I'm so happy that the anime series is now coming out. I believe season 1 just finished up, and I'm equally obsessed with both the anime and the manga series, and that is Spy Family. My love for Spy Family truly knows no bounds. So this is another series that I feel like has something for everyone, because at the core, this is obviously about a spy. We have Twilight pictured here, and for his latest mission, he needs to create a family to look more legitimate to his target. So he has a marriage of convenience with this woman, Yor, and then he adopts this little girl, Anya, from an orphanage. Meanwhile, the 3 of them have very big secrets that they are hiding from each other. For one thing, Twilight is hiding from his family that he is a spy. Yor, his wife, is an assassin, and Anya is a telepath. So it's just incredibly entertaining and hilarious seeing these 3 people hiding these secrets from each other, yet they are forming this adorable and cozy family unit at the same time. And so this is part epic spy adventure, but it also, like I said, has a very cozy feel to it when we're just hanging out with the family. And then there's also scenes where we're seeing Anya, who I think she's like 4 or 5 years old, when she's going to her new elite private school and she's trying to navigate friendships and different things like that. And the series is just so endearing, so hilarious. I have laughed out loud several times while reading all of the volumes that I've read so far. I've read up to volume 6 at this point, and there are currently 8 volumes out in English, and volume 9 is set to come out, I believe, in March of next year, which is super exciting. And like, are you kidding me with this art style? Look at Anya. Is she not the cutest thing you've ever seen? Like, is she my favorite character? Oh man, I love Twilight. Twilight is a daddy. Like, that's really it. But Anya, oh my god, she's just so adorable. And then in volume 4, they adopt a dog, and it's just like, this series just gets better and better. Also, I'm dying for there to be an actual romance between Twilight and Yor, because yes, so far, they have a marriage of convenience, but like, there was this epic scene in volume 1, it's pictured here, where Twilight and Yor are running away from these people that are after Twilight. And so he literally takes a ring off of a grenade and he puts it on her finger. And like, what? He says, I pledge myself to you? Like, come on, this needs to be a romance for real. Like, come on. Next up for number 4 on this list, we have another recommendation from Ashley from Bookish Realm. This is a YA historical fiction novel that came out this year that completely blew me away, and now I absolutely need to read everything that this author has ever written. And that is I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. So this takes place in 1989 in Bucharest, Romania, during the dictatorship of Nicolae Ceausescu. I had never heard of this person before. I mean, when we talk about the end of the Cold War, Romania is never talked about, right? We just talk about the fall of the Berlin Wall and then everybody lived happily ever after, right? Like, you know, we're not taught all that much of like the nitty-gritty of the end of the Cold War. And so, like I said, this takes place in Romania. We are centering around our main character, Cristian. And he's just living his life. He's 17 years old, you know, he's going to school, and he and his family are living under this communist regime. And so early on in the book, he is blackmailed into becoming an informant for the Romanian government, for the secret police specifically. And so he has to spy on this American diplomat and his family. And the reason why he even has the opportunity to do so is that his mom is their maid. And so every now and then he'll go to their apartment. And so yeah, he has to spy on these people and report back to the secret police. And so over the course of this novel, we're seeing that like so many people are being blackmailed into being informants, and it just creates this culture of fear and paranoia. And towards the end of this book, we see Cristian's role in the Romanian Revolution, and wow, this book, I mean, I felt like I was there. I felt like I was truly in Bucharest in 1989, right alongside Cristian. Like, Ruta Sepetys' writing is incredible. What's also really interesting is that Ruta Sepetys included a really lengthy author's note. She also includes a lot of photographs from the time. Here's pictures of Ceausescu and his wife. And what's absolutely insane is how Ceausescu completely fooled the Western world. He was a genius at coming off one way to like our own government, and like there's pictures of him with the Queen and like hanging out with different presidents and things like that. Yet he was running this incredibly oppressive dictatorship and regime. And there is a quote in this book from someone who was working, I believe, in the US Embassy in Romania, where they said that this regime was so oppressive that it out-Stalined Stalin. And it's just insane that we were never taught about this in school, but I really appreciate the research that went into this and how much I learned from this story. And at the same time, I just loved Christian's story and all the other characters involved. And the ending of this I thought was really perfect. It's a little bit open-ended, I guess, but I just feel like it was the perfect way to end this book. All right, we have made it to my top 3 for this video, and oh my god, these 3 books slash series, like, they have my heart, they have my soul. I'm so glad that I discovered these books this year. So for number 3, I had to go with Full Metal Alchemist. So this is a very, very popular manga and anime series, and I highly recommend that you read the manga as well as watch the anime because it's just so, so well done. But you know, I had heard the title Full Metal Alchemist thrown around on the internet over the years, but I had no idea what this is about. And so when I started reading manga, I actually did this vlog where I tried out 5 very popular manga and anime series. Spy Family was actually featured in that video, but so was Full Metal Alchemist. So I will link that video up in the cards above if you are interested. But this is a story that centers around Edward and Alphonse Elric. They are both alchemists. And when they are young children, their mother passes away and they decide to use alchemy to bring their mother to life. It is very much a no-no. It is very taboo to try to transmute humans through alchemy. So unfortunately what happens is Edward loses one of his arms, one of his legs, and Alphonse loses his entire body. And out of desperation, Edward bonds Alphonse's soul to this suit of armor that you see here. And so the main premise of this story is that Edward becomes an alchemist for the state, for the government. And along the way, him and Alphonse are desperately trying to find this substance known as the Philosopher's Stone because it's pretty much their only option to get Edward his arm and leg back and to get Alphonse his entire body back. I didn't expect to love this series as much as I do, probably because it is what is known as a shonen manga, which is manga that is geared towards essentially teenage boys, like boys ages 12 to 18, something like that. And so I just assumed that a story like that wasn't going to be for me, but boy, was I wrong. I love these brothers with my heart and soul. You can't help but feel so much for these two from the very beginning. And the art style of this is really unique and just so cool. And seeing how Edward and Alphonse use alchemy in combat, especially, it's just like, oh, it's so cool. And you're just on the edge of your seat the whole time. And you can't help but love all the characters, especially the brothers, like I said. So I can't wait to read more of this series in 2023. I have read the first 9 volumes. There are 27 volumes out in total, and there is going to be a romance later on in the story, and I cannot wait for that to kick in. What can I say? This series is absolutely incredible. So for number 2 on this list, oh my god, my top 2 books of 2022, we have another manga series that is absolutely my top favorite manga series of all time. I don't think anything will ever surpass it, and I haven't even read that many volumes of this yet, but this story, these characters have completely stolen my heart, and I'm so glad that I picked up this series this year. So for number 2 on this list, we have Sweat and Soap. This is a romance slice of life series about our main characters Asako and Notori. This is a workplace romance that truly shows what a healthy and loving relationship should be. Essentially, both Notori and Asako work for this soap company. She works in the finance department, he works in the creative department, so he's actually coming up with scents and things like that. So one day they randomly meet, and Notori is absolutely obsessed with Asako's natural scent. Meanwhile, Asako is very self-conscious about the way that she smells because she sweats a lot, and so she's always putting on deodorant and things like that to make sure that she smells nice. And so we see that Notori is actually inspired to create more sense for the company because of the way that Asako smells, which is weird. I know that it's weird, but guys, trust me, it works. This is so adorable. Like I said, the relationship between Asako and Notori, like I teared up and cried several times reading the first 4 volumes that I've read so far. There is something just so endearing and amazing about their relationship. The open communication is everything. We see throughout the series that different obstacles kind of come in their way, and the way that they communicate and overcome those things is just spectacular. I've never read anything like this before. I don't think I'll ever read anything like it again. And also, once again, I'm obsessed with the art style. They are just so freaking adorable together. I promise this is one of the best romances I've ever read, and I really hope that some of you guys will pick up this series and will enjoy it as much as I do. All right, guys, we have made it to my #1 book of 2022. I'm sure a lot of you guys can guess what book this is gonna be. This is a Harry Potter fan fiction that I read all the way back in early January, and it has completely taken over my life. I still can't stop thinking about this story. It's literally one of the best things I've ever read, and it's a shame that it's a fan fiction, because that means the author can't make any money off of it. But #1 on this list is Manacled by Senlin Yu. Now, some of you may be thinking that this should be on one of my top romance lists of the year, but in my opinion, this is a dark, war-centered fantasy novel with a very strong romantic plot. I wouldn't call this a fantasy romance, but that's just me personally. So that's why I'm including it on this list and not one of my romance videos. But this is a fan fiction that centers around Hermione, so Draco Malfoy and Hermione Granger. It combines the Harry Potter world with the idea from The Handmaid's Tale. So we find out right away, and it's like the first sentence in the synopsis, that Harry Potter is dead. Voldemort has won the war. So he has taken over Great Britain. I'm sure he's trying to take over the rest of the world as well. And actually, I want to give a quick shout out. I have a physical copy of this because of my amazing friend Mel from Mel Binds Fix. You can't just like go on Amazon and buy physical copies of fan fictions because that would be illegal. But yes, my amazing friend Mel, she binds fan fictions herself, and so she gifted this copy of Manacled to me, and it's just absolutely stunning. Like, there's even this beautiful bookmark with the crane on it, which will make sense if you actually read the book. And then I do want to show you guys the naked hardback because it's just absolutely beautiful. Like, are we joking? Every time I look at this, Mel, if you're watching, this just makes me insanely happy. But at the very beginning of this story, we see that Voldemort has implemented this repopulation program because he's been making all of these pure blood witches and wizards get married and have children with each other. But they're finding that all of these, or most of these children, are being born squibs, so they don't have any magic. And so Voldemort decides to force these half-blood and muggle-born witches to be surrogates for these pure blood couples. By the way, this deviates from canon during Order of the Phoenix, so book 5. So Hermione has been in prison for quite some time since the end of the war, and she is now assigned to be the surrogate for Draco Malfoy and his wife Astoria. And so this is told in 3 parts. We see the first part is what I just described to you when she first becomes his surrogate. Part 2, which is a huge chunk of the story, is flashbacks. We see basically the entirety of the Wizarding War and what went wrong and why Voldemort ended up winning. And then part 3 is back in the present time. One of the things that was so compelling about this story to me is how the use of magic makes this whole repopulation program even more sinister and horrifying than in The Handmaid's Tale. Like, it's absolutely unreal what these witches are going through, and it just feels so real. It feels like you are there with the rest of these characters. I also really enjoyed how the Wizarding War was portrayed, and there were a lot of discussions surrounding the idea of how far should you go to win, and is it ever going to be too far? It was also interesting how Hermione's relationships with Harry and Ron were affected over the course of, you know, this interpretation of the war. By the way, I mean, I have to mention, as you can tell, it's well over 1,000 pages. But oh my god, is it worth your time? This is such an epic and sweeping story. I vividly, to this day, still remember certain epic scenes and moments. Like I said, at the core of this story is a romance between Draco and Hermione. And so we see these scenes where Draco just like goes off on people who are trying to harm Hermione, and there's other characters that get really epic and badass moments as well. And speaking of the romance between Hermione and Draco, this is an incredibly dark romance. I'm gonna throw it out there. Draco does some pretty unforgivable things throughout this book. Absolutely. I'm not gonna debate that. However, I still rooted for them to be together. Like, what sorcery does Senlin Yu have that, like, she made me truly root for this couple and for these characters individually? And boy, do Draco and Hermione go through it to get to their happily ever after. Oh my god. But the journey is so worth it to me. You can't convince me that Hermione should be with anyone else. The Draco-Hermione ship is it for me. I've never been convinced about Ron and Hermione being paired together, and I like how Senlin Yu addressed that in the story. Like, oh my god, the enemies to lovers goodness of Draco and Hermione is everything to me, and it's because of this story that I have become addicted to reading Hermione fanfic. So hopefully I have convinced you to pick this up if you haven't read this already. I will say, obviously, it's incredibly dark. Please look up the content warnings because this is a fan fiction, and I will link it down below. Senlin Yu does an incredible job of listing all of the content warnings before you get into the story. So definitely take care of yourself and your mental health before deciding to go into this, but I cannot recommend this highly enough. Absolutely one of my favorite books I have ever read, and I do not say that lightly. So that is going to be it for my top 10 non-romance books, as well as manga and graphic novels that I read throughout 2022. I hope that you guys got some really great recommendations from this video. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below telling me what some of your favorite books were that you read in 2022. I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!